Right. Well, I saw this when I was telling these guys earlier before we started that I was 14 when I saw it. My stepdad took me to see this film, and it opened me up. It opened up an entire idea that you can't trust media, because as a kid, you just accept what comes to you. You don't think about it. That came out of there like I'm kind of wise, you know what I mean? In terms of like knowing this is all cynical lies and knowing
That's
that
what RoboCop did for me.
Yeah, and that was just like it was just
different generation.
Yeah, exactly. Which movie did you mention?
RoboCop.
RoboCop. Yeah, well, that was a few years later, and actually the kind of the same story. You know, it was.
Well, that's what I was like 9 when my father took me to see that, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, and then Starship Troopers is the same story again.
Yeah,
we're just gonna keep doing this until eventually somebody realizes there's a problem.
And then the Showgirls is another version of this.
Good luck on that. People do realize, but it's not like the problem solved.
They realize, but they're not in a position to do anything about it.
You're right.
Thank Chris wholeheartedly, because this has always been on my list. I had never seen it, and you forced me.
You need to see it.
In for a treat, huh?
Oh God, yeah, this is amazing.
Wow, the slick writing, the great dialogue in this thing it just rolled so nicely. And it was complex.
Ned Beatty's speech.
Yeah,
Ned Beatty out crazying Peter Finch is just hilarious.
Right.
That the framing, the composition of that shot, that sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right behind Chris. Yeah.
Yeah.
Insane.
Telling me Lumet's a good director? I don't believe you.
Lumet's a good director. There's a short book he wrote on filmmaking that's really worth a read. I can't remember what
it's called. Making Movies.
I think it's Making Movies.
Yeah.
He didn't work too long in the title, which is good. So it's
no, I like it's got that no nonsense quality that I
admire. It's like a fun book.
He was on fire to the very end. Did anyone see Before the Devil Knows You're Dead? It's fucking fantastic.
Yes.
No, I have not.
Like even when he was on his way,
it's phenomenal.
Amazing. He was amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to point out now that David Mamet wrote a book called On Directing Film.
Okay. Well, so did Richard L. Baer, but he's the guy who did almost all the episodes of Green Acres.
So you can make a really successful film with no music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There was diegetic music in there once in a while, just like, how do you feel? It's the news hour, the UBS news hour, and you hear the music playing. And that's great.
That's about it. And they used it in the end credits too.
Yeah, I know.
Like, this is the only music we have.
That's all you need. And it's just, someone pointed out that this film starts out, all the scenes are very dark. For some reason, they're like really low key, and then it gets brighter and brighter as you go, because everything is brightly lit.
It's meant to be a more of like a documentary type thing at the beginning, and then as the unreality takes over, it becomes more and more produced. It becomes a slicker and slicker production over the course of
this whole film is so prophetic, really. I mean, it's
way ahead of its time, dude.
So there's a really
whole merging of entertainment.
So there's a really interesting story about that, which is after the success of that live version of, what the fuck was the name of it? The nuclear war movie that they did on CBS with George Clooney in it back in the 90s. Failsafe, yes.
Yeah.
After the success of Failsafe, Clooney was really pitching doing Network as a live. He wanted to star in it. And so he went and
Did he want to play the Peter Finch character?
Mm-hmm.
Or the Bill Holden.
Or the Bill Holden.
No, he wanted to be the Peter Finch character. But
I don't think he pulled that off.
The executives were like, oh well, we don't think people are gonna like be into this now. So he tried to figure out if people would be into it. So he took Network around and showed it to like high school age kids, and they didn't realize it was a comedy because everything had taken place by the time they were looking at this, and they were like, no, this is just how the world is.
Yeah, this is how the world works.
We're all
when you saw it, did it have Ben Mankiewicz at the beginning talking about it for like 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
But there's Howard Beale. We're all his humanoids now. The UBS. I mean, the CCA took over everything. Just I think 2 days ago, Discovery bought out Warner Media. Did you hear about this?
Right, it's gonna be Warner Brothers Discovery, Warner Discovery, or what's it gonna be called?
Warner. It's Warner
Discovery
Brothers.
already owned Warner. Somebody
Either
else.
way, it's like this shit's still happening in big time. So
Because I never seen this film though, it made me think of the end of the new Joker film.
Mhm.
And it also made me think of there was a real life story where that female news anchor killed herself on live TV, and they made a fictional movie about it called Christine.
Oh, I heard about this.
Rebecca Hall. Yeah, did anyone see that?
No,
I heard about it, but I didn't see it. No,
Yeah,
okay.
I saw it at Sundance. I wanted more from it, but the director is a really fine filmmaker. But it just reminded me of both of those films in a way, like when he's murdered at the end. Spoiler alert.
well,
But,
it's also all the stuff with CCA and the machinations behind the like Saudi money coming in and stuff really reminded me of 30 Rock for some reason.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's weird. 30 Rock is a sitcom version of Network.
It's sort of the sitcom version.
I thought this movie was so brilliant. The only minor critique I have is I think the characters yell too much and like constantly.
There are a lot of rants.
There's a lot of yelling back
They
and
are
forth.
New Yorkers.
That's like that's
Hey, God damn it.
it's a combination of like actors probably making choices and then Sidney being okay with it or wanting that. But I
and
think
Patty Chayefsky writing these long monologues.
Yes.
Hey, who's surprised to know that this is this is one of the favorite films of some of the worst writers in Hollywood? You can just go through a list of people who think that everything that they write is the greatest thing ever.
Esterhazy thinks of himself as Chayefsky.
It's
the dialogue never sounds natural because everyone's kind of.
Jared, I saw you doing this. Was that the typewriter?
No. That was the theme song to because as we're talking about how there's no music in here, and even the music intro to his TV show was just like typing, if you remember.
Yeah.
It was like,
and they used that in the tail credits too.
Remember in the
teletype.
60s and 70s, they always had that weird teletype sound behind the news.
But
the trippiest one is like, you ever see Cool Hand Luke? There's a bit where they're tarring a road and there's music playing. Lalo Schifrin wrote it and ended up on the Channel 7 News for like 8 years.
And it's fantastic. It is a fantastic piece of music. And when Glenn Kenyon figured out that that's what it was, he found it on the Cool Hand Luke soundtrack. It was like, that's the news music. It's a fantastic piece of music.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's good stuff.
But I thought you were doing the typewriter, as they say about certain movies that you can hear the typing.
I want to go around the horn with a question. No,
hold on.
Oh, go ahead. Take it first.
There were just moments where characters were. I don't mind the yelling but it's like a person would yell and then the other person would respond with yelling, and then they would yell back and another person would respond with yelling, and I was like, there's just a lot of yelling back and forth. It's sort of like my critique on what was that the
show.
The
Real Housewives?
No, what was the Peck and Paw movie? The really famous one?
Wild Bunch.
Wild Bunch.
The Wild Bunch is a great movie, but my only critique on that movie really was
Bill Holden
trying to outback each other. Mm-hmm. Everyone had the same. I'm the badass. No, I'm the badass. No, I'm the badass. No, I'm the badass. I'm the real badass.
Well, the one scene I can think of is the scene where Frank Hackett fires come on blah, blah, blah. I got the name of the charker, but it's William Holden. But after he's like to take Howard Beale off the air, and that's fascinating. But then again, it's like that's Frank Hackett just basically shafting everybody.
But there's too much of like, God damn it, I am saying words and you are not going to take these words away from me right now. Oh yes, I am. This very moment. But
it was a style. It was for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But then again, this also goes back to new cinema. Maybe New Yorkers yelled a lot at each other. Again, going back to that idea. But I want to go around the horn. And the thing is, I have a question about, and I've always asked this ever since I first saw it. Do you think that Howard Beale was imbued by some prana-like thing that made him speak for him? Or do you think
Hindus call it prana?
Yeah, exactly. Or do you think he was actually losing his mind?
He's losing his mind.
I think he was having
But
a
he was making too
psychotic
much
break.
sense to be losing his mind.
No, there's plenty of crazy people who make perfectly good sense about most things. They're
Right, they
just
could be
also
lucid.
crazy.
The fact that he was so easily swayed by Ned Beatty and just like changed it. So like this, last night I told you to do this, but never mind that.
God.
Well, that's
We're
the
going to
thing.
do something else.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's
I've
like,
got one word for you: capitalism.
yeah.
Yeah, plastics.
The thing is, if you take him on face value and say that he is some spirit's talking to him and putting words in his mouth, this film has a wonderful, almost metaphysical feel to it. He is a
Well, and
Latter-day
Chayefsky did do,
prophet denouncing the hypocrisries of our time.
He did
Then-
altered states.
Yeah, but then at the
Yeah.
end with Jensen, he realized it's great because it erases it, but does it? Did it really happen? And it simply got supplanted by something else, or was never there in the first place?
Truly disturbed individial being taken advantage of by everyone around him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Well,
exactly.
it was really funny to see him go from the anchor desk to like the evangelical,
Right,
Oh,
the
yeah, with
stand-up preacher.
Yeah, exactly.
in the. I mean, that's quite a journey there. Like to go from
It's a stylistic journey. It's like I almost feel like it's jumping the shark at that point, because it's like at this point I don't believe it. Like a guy going crazy on the news and them letting him do it because it was very well justified. William Holden's character was pissed off when he said, "What are we going to do?" And he said, "Nothing. Let him talk." He had just found out his whole
Right,
news
he'd
department had
been
been taken
shafted
away
by
from him.
what's
He'd
his
been
name.
shafted.
Yeah.
Right. So that was plausible.
Yeah.
But when Faye Dunaway got her way and got to make her show with the all the other characters being introduced on the
And the
carousel,
Nazi tongue out.
There.
now we're in pure like
Another
Um,
segment of Vox Populi.
just we're in
Sybil the Shepherd.
Yeah.
No.
Don, don't you think that for these people being on the air is like oxygen? Like they were taking him off the air, and then they were turning around, they put him back on the air.
He said he'd go nuts if he didn't
Well,
do.
and you get
Yeah,
that,
I got my
you get
job
that
back.
from him when he's talking about it. He says, it's like, yeah, you can take the high ground and like quit and write your book that nobody's going to read.
Right.
But I'm
Maybe-
like, this is what I
Sounds
do.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, the point is like when
Plus, he
Diana
is
Christian took the
crazy.
news away from God damn, I can't remember the name of the character.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yeah.
Schumacher.
And then you see the results of her owning the news in this ridiculous tableau, with all these little things.
it becomes farcical at that point.
It is farcical. At the time, it was like hysterical. When I first,
Well, no,
you first see it, it's funny.
the
But it's like that now. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, the only difference is they wouldn't put on the Mao Zedong hour. It would be fascist terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
They
I
picked
never
the
really
wrong.
bought-
They picked the wrong angle. They
Yeah.
yes,
were going
they
for
went
more of
left
the-
instead of going right, which
Right,
Fox News has obviously proved that's where the money is.
Yeah,
is being
exactly right.
fascist.
They
That's
were
the only
thinking they were
difference.
thinking that the people who were going to take over television were people who went to like Choate, and instead it was people who went to Harvard Business School.
Mhm.
So it went completely off.
yeah.
And if you want to
But
appeal to
you
the
do get
masses,
that-
if you want to appeal to the masses who are mad as hell, you take them to the right.
Right.
I mean, Rush Limbaugh and everybody on Fox News proved that you can make a lot of money tapping into people's frustration.
This
You
is
can
the
get
thing that
elected
everybody got
president of
wrong
the
back
United States.
That too.
then. Well,
Like the movie, obviously like a satire, but ahead of its time. But it also ventures into the realm of surrealism and absurdity, right?
Yeah.
absolutely.
In a pretty brilliant way. But yeah, I think you guys are right in terms of it. It crosses this line. I love that they're exploiting him, but it really does beg the question of like what's really going on in that main character's head once he gets the second gig, the second part.
Right. Well,
Yeah. Eating
is
his own shit.
Peter Finch the main character, or is Bill Holden the main character?
he's a prime mover, but I don't think he's the main character. I think Bill Holden's supposed to be the main character.
Sidney Lumet said William Holden is the maypole that all the crazy spins
Yes.
around.
Okay.
There's a
And that's-
couple
I mean-
of bonus features that they pulled them off of AMC and put them on. What is this on HBO Max right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like look at more material or whatever, there's a few minutes sort of an analysis, and then there's a very short interview with not Patty Chayefsky, with Sidney Lumet talking about the movie.
Right.
One of them's like Sidney Lumet is like 4 minutes, and the other one's a little bit longer. It's like an analysis of the movie. And Lumet says that basically he says William Holden's the main character.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
why you're interested in his affair, basically, why that kind of affects everything.
Yeah.
But also the affair shows what kind of person Faye Dunaway is. Like,
Oh yeah,
that whole scene of them going away
person.
together, and she's just talking about this. Like, he doesn't say a word through
Yeah.
that entire series of
She's
cuts.
making out with him in the car, talking about ratings, and then she's
Right.
running down the beach and
Talking to the
she's
rest
still
of the-
talking about the show.
and she orgasms while talking about what their share is. Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
literally
Before he gets started.
right.
yeah.
yeah, Jared.
Oh, I was going to say, no woman can orgasm that fast. First of all, second of all, she's inhuman.
They say it from the very beginning about her. He says, he was confessing to his wife. He says, did she love you? And he says, I'm not sure she's capable of that.
Yeah.
It's like-
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
represents everything that's happening in the movie. She is TV.
yeah,
Right.
she's the future. If you
Yeah,
want,
she's the
if you want
future.
System, Schumacher's the past, Christensen's the future, Peter Finch is a prime
Well,
mover. It's
yeah,
all kind
'cause
of like,
Holden is the greatest generation, and she's sort of the prelude to the baby.
what we got now.
The boomers. Yeah.
In that intro, I did watch the one that had the intro by that gentleman. Somebody
Yeah.
else.
Ben Mankiewicz.
Oh, Mankiewicz. Yeah.
And they said that he said something about how Aaron Sorkin said this is the best screenplay of all time or something. It's perfect.
Speaking of overwriting,
Right.
Yeah.
And I like over the years, I've become a really I am not a fan of Aaron Sorkin, and I think he's full of shit, and I fucking hate him.
Okay.
At first, I was on board, but then I'm like, you know what? You're full of shit, dude. And I could see how he loved this movie because it is very stylized, but I think this movie is smarter than anything he's ever written. And I can see why he idolizes this, but I kind of think he's bugged.
He wrote Don't Look Up, right?
He did.
Did he?
No,
Who is
that's
that?
Wasn't that Adam
that's
McKay?
Adam
Didn't-
McKay.
yeah,
Adam
Yeah.
McKay.
Adam McKay.
Adam McKay was channeling the shit out of this movie, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I get the feeling Adam McKay and Sorkin are both kind of worshiping at the temple of
Yeah.
of,
Including all
of
the screaming.
Patty
right?
Chayefsky.
Yeah.
I heard
don't-
I heard a really good description of Aaron Sorkin's writing one time, that it's him standing in the shower in the morning having an argument with the television he watched the night before, and that's 100% what his writing is. And this is
Also-
about what the
Wait.
television was saying the night before. It's
Uh,
not an
Sure.
argument with it.
Mhm.
This is about it.
Part where the whole time he's also masturbating.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ew. So okay,
I
so
left that out, but that was mentioned.
is this overwritten? I would say it is.
It is.
There
but
were
it doesn't
times where
matter.
I felt sorry for William Holden for having to kind of leave the plane of reality and spew sort of these grand pronouncements.
Well, yeah,
Well,
because it doesn't run too fast, right? I mean, it's not an overly long movie.
Yeah.
To get that much change in an arc, you need to stylize it, I think.
Also, if you do
Because people aren't gonna track it.
also you can do a hard. This is basically a hard satire.
So you have to be on the nose, is what you're saying, Joe.
Yeah.
Hard satires
Well-
need flowery, need elevated language, so you know it's a satire.
Well, here's the thing, Johnny. I agree with you. I do think it's overwritten a little bit in this sense. In fact, the scene where William Holden's character leaves Faye Dunaway's character,
Yes.
That goes on and on.
That's the scene where I was like, ugh, stop
Yeah.
talking.
right? He's such a good actor, right? And
Yeah.
they're so great.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling in that moment being like, this is so stylized. Like this dialogue is so presentational.
You are the institution.
It's
of television.
no longer a breakup. It's like he's making these pronouncements about reality and human nature and
Which I think is how his character would talk. Actually.
Well,
Okay.
maybe-
We've
Especially
already
in this
established
situation.
he's got that one story that he tells.
Uh-huh.
He tells Peter Finch when they're getting a taxi cab.
and then he tells it again.
tells
In
the
the middle of the
same
George
fucking
Washington Bridge.
But
Don't do it, kid.
Right?
even though I agree with you, John, in that sense, I wasn't alive when this movie came out or when it was made, but I'm guessing that movies weren't written like this yet, or
No.
no one had ever
No.
seen kind
Au
of
contraire, there are lots of
Remember,
films like
Chayefsky
this.
comes from the Rod Serling school
Yeah.
of writing, and
Yeah.
the writing in the 50s in those TV playhouses and stuff was a lot like this. In a sense, this movie is a callback to that kind of TV acting.
It's a lot like
from the 50s.
Like we're gonna show you. We're gonna pull back the mask and show you what's really going on.
Right.
He did a lot of
the Requiem for a Heavyweight.
He was
he did
trying
a lot
to
of
write-
90-minute dramas back in the 50s, and this feels like that. It's like,
Well,
everything out, kind of everything said.
No, I'm asking because he won the Academy Award for the screenplay. I'm asking, like, it just seems really, again, of course, it's ahead of its time in terms of its content, but the whip smart dialogue, like, was that really that?
He one of a
It's like
kind.
Altman, though. It's a little bit like Slapshot in a lot of ways. It's all same era.
Ish.
So
He
it's
was
like,
the only
it
did
was
have
a little
a
more.
real
It was more
70s
obvious
feel to it.
because I think everyone's supposed to be really overeducated in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like kind of that weird Ivy.
Jared, he's
Well,
got
they talk about Hamlet, quoting Hamlet at some point.
And at one point, Diane calls the Beale a strip Savonarola. I'm like, that's really clever, man.
I wanted to Google that.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: Johnny dies.
Mm.
Burned at the stake.
Man,
But they were trying. He was originally writing this as a TV show. Like
Yeah,
I believe it.
he wanted this to
Oh.
be a TV show initially, and then just I don't know if he couldn't get it together or what, so he just decided to turn it into a
was
screenplay.
Boom.
And then it was written, and then it was directed basically straight off the page. They didn't change anything.
Mhm.
Like
Why would-
all the dialogue and everything. So it didn't really have a second pass. It just had came straight out of Chayefsky's head onto
it's
the paper
pure.
and went up on
Right.
the screen.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
in that little interview with Lumet, he says, "I think I changed 3 words."
Right. Now, interesting
you
technical.
guys all noticed that the main credits, it's Network by Patty Chayefsky.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That felt like a TV show. Yeah.
It's
No,
not even
And
written
by the way,
it.
Chayefsky was on set every day and not lurking in the background. He was like co-directing this.
He was probably
Well,
waving
he was
scripts at
also
people
like
during
the
the entire
producer,
movie, right?
Very mad at Finch for missing the first "as" in "I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore."
Oh, wow.
It's "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore."
Well,
And he missed the first.
prosody,
They only did 1.5 takes of that because he was dying. So they
Yeah,
didn't
sure.
have another take of him saying "I'm as mad as hell and not going to take it
He
anymore."
ran out of steam. They did a take and a half. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But interesting technical thing
So
about
then
this. The Network was shot with 2 lenses. It was shot with a 15 millimeter and an 85 millimeter lens. That's it.
I need a bigger air horn.
Now, no, hold on. The thing is, 85 millimeter lens. It's something interesting. This film that people didn't notice is that the 85 is long. You have to put the camera a little bit further back.
Yep.
So the camera.
Those are 2 of my favorite.
The camera's never that close to anybody. This is, I've never seen Chinatown. Chinatown is a camera, or even Pusher, even. The camera's over his shoulders, right? This one, the camera's always further back. It's always distanced. That was a very interesting effect after a while, cumulatively, because
I know those lengths. Those are 2 of my favorite lengths, and I think that you can shoot fantastic. Like, I think that's all you need for a picture sometimes.
But it has something to say about how the film was put together in terms of like giving you a little bit of depth, a little bit of separation between what you're seeing. It's never intimate. This film is never intimate.
Well, yeah, you need a set then.
Yeah.
Breakaway.
So it's good stuff.
Which they don't have. None of this is on sets. Like this entire
it's all-
thing was shot on location, including this stuff was shot in Toronto at some TV station in Toronto. They just built this out in a real TV station in Toronto.
You know what? When I first saw this film, that little rose behind you, the little stained glass rose. I've always noticed that the leaves and the bottom part one of them was mispainted. There's a yellow one and a red one, and the reverse on one side has always bugged me.
On
You
this
can see
show,
it
though,
behind them, but
You
they
can
don't.
do your release.
Yeah.
They
See,
painted
right
the
there,
wrong
right
one
there.
red and wrong
Tad's
one
got it.
yellow. I
Tad,
see
see,
it.
it is.
I see it.
I wanted to see some of those other segments. We never got to see them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see what Vox Populi was.
But
like.
they made
That's
up
just a
for it.
computer
They
that
made
puts
up
out
for it
polls.
during the contract negotiation.
Oh, and Chris has been supernaturally quiet this entire time. I
I
think
told you I was going to go last.
Okay,
Yeah.
it might be
everybody
time.
Well,
Go
I did
ahead.
want to say, since we brought up the terrorists, what are the ecumenical liberation army?
That's right.
Not the symbiotes liberation.
New.
That's how you harass people.
They have a
Talk about
different. They have a
talk about
different.
freeze frame from the 70s. I mean, all the stuff that they dropped. That it was great that they mentioned like Archie Bunker and the Bionic Woman, and then Patty Hearst came up several times.
Yes,
but you know, they had. I don't think they could have done. They couldn't have shown you those other segments because I don't think it would have worked. If you'd actually seen her other show, were they on another show? Yeah. The Terrorists?
No, it's the same. Oh yeah, they were on another
show.
That's a separate show, right? But all
the
Sybil and all those people, you never get to see what they're doing.
Oh, she was complaining at the end of the film because what's her name? The Marxist was complaining that was a lead into her show. And she's getting your ratings are sinking my show. Yeah, exactly.
Right. You can blow this. All right, I'm done, Chris.
These are better for this, right?
I mean, like I said, I think this is literally one of the greatest movies ever made. I try to watch it at least once a year. I used to think it was perfect. I no longer think it is perfect because this time, knowing you fuckers were watching it too, I was trying to watch it this time as critically as possible. And I've decided that the stuff that really doesn't work is anytime William Holden is talking to either Beatrice Straight, who set the record for the shortest time on screen to win the Best Supporting Actress award.
5 minutes and 48 seconds.
That's the one who plays his wife.
Some of the stuff that comes out of Bill Holden's mouth when he's talking to Faye Dunaway or Beatrice Straight is kind of cringy. Like it's just like, whoa, like just stop. Like you're a character in someone else's script.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying about it. I felt sorry for William Holden for having to say some of those things.
This time, none of that shit worked.
Well, like I said, that's the only time I was like, this is way too stylized.
This is not good. This is not well. Like
it's like performative and not.
Like when he first meets Faye Dunaway and they're going through their little back and forth. Like I need to get involved with over middle-aged man. Blah blah blah. Wow. No, you couldn't get away with this now.
Yeah, well, the first time they described him in dialogue, that's the between them as a craggy middle-aged man. Yeah. I let it go the first time, but they said it like 4 times.
The second time's not good. Having said that, every other fucking word in this movie is perfection. There was a pull quote I pulled. Screenwriter Aaron Sorkin has claimed that Chayefsky, and particularly his script for this film, have been a major inspiration for his own writing. He has written, quote, "No predictor of the future, not even Orwell, has been so right as Chayefsky was when he wrote Network." And yeah, I mean, like you guys all saw it. Like he kind of saw everything coming. Before I get to this follow-up on that thought, just, this is one of those like 1976, like if you look at the above the line talent on this, it's A-list everything.
Right.
Like everybody at the top of their fucking game, major studio production, comes out of the gate like one of the darkest, most cynical, in my view, one of the funniest fucking things ever written. Like they literally just don't make movies like this anymore.
Hey, God bless the 70s, man. You could put stuff like this out.
You guys didn't bring this up. There is no exposition in this movie at all. Like they assume that you are going to be comfortable, dropped into the middle of inside baseball, behind the scenes, wonky television executive. Like even broadcast news held my hand more than this.
They assume the audience is smart, which is like
and paying attention.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. It's a strange assumption these days.
If you want the most extreme version of that, it's Primer by Shane Carruth. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. No, like I'm not going to give you anything. And by the way, I still don't think I understand that movie. You guys, nobody brought up the thing everybody talks about when they mention this movie, which is the mad as hell soliloquy that Finch does in the middle.
I did threaten to kill anyone if they quoted it last
I don't
week.
think.
Yeah, we were intimidated.
In the last couple of viewings, I don't even think that's the best moment of this movie. The best moment of this movie is the one Scott pulled which is given the goddamn overheads clause. Like, these guys entire fucking thing. I will watch that scene on a loop.
Yeah,
it's so good.
You can blow the seminal struggle of the working class out your ass.
So hostile and so cynical. Perfection.
Well, I remember when she first mentions, I forget what his name is, the
Great Ahmed Khan.
Yeah, Ahmed Khan. She goes, he wears a hussar shako.
Yeah.
And so he does.
And he does, yes.
You meet him, he's got he's eating
Just
Kentucky
like
Fried
our
Chicken. He
phone.
actually, his first line is, "What the fuck you talking about?" And now
with a bucket of chicken on the table.
right in front of him. That's beautiful, man.
back to my thank for the 70s. So I went and looked. So the same year this movie came out, this was the year that Taxi Driver came out.
Yeah.
The year that All the President's Men came out, and I think Dog Day Afternoon came out at Christmas 75, so it's technically like almost 1976.
Right.
I'm gonna put Jim on the spot for a second because he's a little bit older than I am. There was a part of me watching this movie, like on one hand, you're like, man, he saw all this shit coming. Like he predicted the fourth network, he predicted television, news organizations being owned by entertainment, the cynical exploitation of mentally challenged people. You could go, he predicted MAGA, he predicted, this sort of bullshit faux populism that gets everybody running toward anyway. Having said that, this movie was Chayefsky thought he was writing about what was happening at the time.
Right.
And I was only 11 when this came out. I think I saw it on Z Channel or something about a year afterward. But I remember enough of Gerald Ford's last year in office and how, all the bullshit that was going on. And I guess on some level, and maybe Jim, you could tell me I'm full of shit or not, like there's a level of perspective that comes with watching, like you go watch, I should have paired this with Taxi Driver, which is,
Yes.
Or
it's
Dog
like
Day Afternoon.
a vision of New York in 1976, same year this came out, as like some sort of utter fucking hellhole. And it forced me to go back and read a few things about like the 70s. It was the same kind of thing where you kind of like feel like everything was sort of falling apart.
Like Pelham 1, 2, 3.
And which was a year or two earlier. And we didn't
Yeah.
have social media to kind of like make everything sound worse than it is at times. But this was a real rough patch maybe it's a patch we never really ever shook off.
No.
But
remember
the thing that we're all feeling right now,
it.
post-Trump, is some version of that has been going on for a really long time. And this movie sort of shone a light on it in a very interesting and prophetic way, but it was what was going on a certain level, right?
True.
Well, yeah, at some point, you got to figure that Chayefsky is just pointing out stuff that intelligent people should be able to follow and say, yes, this is the trajectory. They may not believe it's going to happen, but
the trend is pointing here.
It's not that crazy satire or whatever.
No,
the other thing is, I remember watching the news, all the reports from Vietnam, which were just basically body counts every night.
Yep.
They would have, and you finally had the moment where Cronkite stopped being this sort of, as he's remembered today, this objective, fatherly guy who's just giving you the news and you make your own thing. And he condemned the war. And basically, the president.
That was that, man.
That was that. It was like, okay, shit, it's over. They called us on that.
That guy. Wait, that guy.
Right.
There's two things that happen right around this time that really do influence this, and one is the pardoning of Nixon. When Nixon gets pardoned and the media basically doesn't say anything about it, a lot of people just completely lost faith in the media at that point in time. It was just like, how the fuck can you do this? This guy's like 10 kinds of criminal. Like he needs to go to jail.
Especially after like All the President's Men or, the Watergate stuff. Yeah. And it's like, and you're going to forgive him?
Yeah,
I remember the down.
Gerald Ford let him off the hook. They're the same party.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the financialized takeover of New York City. And I'm going to once again suggest that everyone watch Adam Curtis's All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. It is now available in the US. It is $3.
Please.
It is $3 on Amazon. And the entire beginning of that is about the coalescence of Randian libertarian capitalism and the introduction of computer-based trading and how all of that came together to form this hydra that is still over us and has run and all the stuff he's talking about with the the Saudi money and the
CCA,
takeovers of takeover CCA and how these different companies are running our lives. And then also Beatty's thing about how there are no nations anymore. There's only companies.
Petrodollars.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
Yeah.
people were talking about that in the 80s. So,
That's
you know,
true.
it's
Right,
not
but this
that
is
long.
before the 80s. So
But this is before the 80s.
to me, that was the even more than the satire of television and media. That Ned Beatty, his one scene basically
Yeah.
is incredible because he says there's no countries anymore. It's just money.
You know,
The
funny thing
second-
is,
the
funny thing
second
is I didn't-
shortest-
It's like rollerball.
I didn't
Yeah.
buy it. The thing is, he's making an argument, and I didn't, even as a kid or even now, I didn't buy it. I think that was his worldview, and it's not true. It wasn't true then that we have a nation of just corporations and not nations, because that's not how the world works. If he was simply trying to convince Howard that this is how the world works, and he did it,
And he
could
did it.
sell anybody
Right.
anything.
But by the way, if you guys watch those extra features, that scene was shot in the New York City Public Library in a conference room,
I believe
Oh.
it.
just with all those bankers lamps on the. Yeah, there it is. Thank you, Chris.
Well, with the fireplace is what caught my attention. It's
Well, originally
beautiful.
it's a great room
Sure is.
with all that dark wood paneling and everything. But originally they got permission to shoot it inside the New York Stock Exchange,
Whoa, that would have been
They read the
something.
script.
which would have been perfect.
Uh-huh.
But then somebody read the script,
Uh-huh.
Like, now we're-
and then they had to shoot it in the library.
Yeah. Okay, there it is.
Thank God for
I just-
librarians.
The last thing I'll say is Chayefsky, the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. I mean, he really only has his fingerprint on, I think, 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
The
Hospital.
Hospital, which I've been threatening to pick for a year because
Altered States.
Altered States in this.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that
He
it?
did a lot of television though.
All 3
He
of
did
those have
tons
a
of television.
similar- all 3 of them have a similar voice,
Mhm.
and it
Yeah.
was a really
Oh
good
yeah.
voice at the time, and it's been co-opted like crazy since. But I mean, as soon as the hospital gets free again, and if it's my turn to pick that week, I will pick it. But because I remember it being pretty great. And Altered States I watch fairly regularly, and it's also, he tried to Alan Smithy his way out of that one because he disagreed with Ken Russell so much as how it ended up turning out. But
Right.
still real.
I'm amazed it turned out as commercially viable
Yeah,
as
that
it
movie
was.
That was his big
Bonkers.
success, maybe.
This is the man who brought us the
Altered
layer of the
States
white
is
dwarf.
utterly fucking
Right.
bonkers. And I don't know, like the pairing of Ken Russell and Chayefsky in retrospect, I think turned out to be really something.
Well, I
But
guess.
I'm glad you guys,
William Hurt helped too.
yeah. I love this fucking movie, and I'm glad you guys liked it too.
Yeah.